Hello, my name is Dr. Mohab Anis, CEO at Innovity, and I'm the lead consultant for the mission to develop a roadmap for Lebanon's universities to strengthen their technology transfer capabilities. The goal of this project was to establish a solid technology transfer process at universities and to give researchers the knowledge and the tools to innovate and to commercialize their research. In order to do that, we followed a four-stage methodology. We started at the beginning to create a framework for the technology transfer process, and then to assess the current status of that framework here in Lebanon, and then conduct from that gap analysis and finally come up with our recommendations. While we were doing the gap analysis and the recommendations, we were conducting both primary research and secondary research and applying best practices that we achieved from our experts in Germany. It's also important to understand that the recommendations that we came up with, there were 6 main principles that we were following. This is how the technology transfer framework looks like, and it is really comprised of 3 main pillars: research management, innovation toolboxes, and innovation commercialization. The research management component has to do with the elements that allow you to do the applied research, convert it to a prototype, and finally into a product that can actually be commercialized. The innovation toolboxes include the necessary elements such as intellectual property rights and the necessary information for researchers in order to conduct their research and to be able to apply it to the market in a proper way. And finally, the innovation commercialization, we look at it from 2 different views. Either commercialization in terms of licensing or selling technologies to the market and to industries, or that it would be a reason for spinning off startups from these universities to the outside world. Here you can see that we've basically categorized the different players in the ecosystem across these 3 main pillars of the technology transfer, which are the research management, the innovation toolboxes, and the commercialization component. After we've conducted the status quo analysis of Lebanon's technology transfer ecosystem, it was important to identify the different kind of gaps that existed. So let's start talking about the kind of recommendations that we came up with and the ones that we think should construct a roadmap for universities. Now, there are 2 approaches here. There's a top-down approach and there's a bottom-up approach. The top-down approach means that these are recommendations that top management will actually apply, and they will actually kind of have a very strong role in terms of making sure that it gets implemented. The bottom up means that it is things that are naturally existent or should naturally be existent in order to infuse and to strengthen the culture of innovation and technology transfer at the university. Now, when you look at the roadmaps, you can actually think about it in 2 different ways. There's a roadmap that can support licensing and selling of technologies to industry, and there's another roadmap that would support the spin-off component of having startups coming out of universities. So the first part of the roadmap is identifying who are the implementing bodies when it comes to matchmaking between universities and industry. Matchmaking activities can be carried out by different entities based on the university's maturity level when it comes to commercialization. If you have low maturity and you don't have any kind of technology transfer structure, you can assign champions to departments. And those roles would be to identify commercializable technologies developed by each department, whether they are students, researchers, or faculty members, and to support them throughout the whole process of connecting them with industry players. We need to do an internal mapping and we need to do an external mapping. The internal mapping, universities in that case identify the different kind of departments and research centers that they have, and they typically put that on the y-axis. and then they match them with the technologies, projects, and intellectual properties that come from these different research areas. And in that way, you're able to do a very good internal mapping between what the kind of departments that you have and between the kind of projects and intellectual property that you have inside the university. Step number 2, which is to do the external mapping, which is to identify various type of applications, various type of business models for each of the identified technologies or projects, and to map them to some kind of an industrial value chain.